Live, we are back, Liberty Conspiracy Live, for this 19th of April, 2023. Welcome, one and all. If you are a fighter for freedom, then you could be a fellow conspirator. Live here on Rockfin, Rumble, and of course on my Twitter feed. I'm Gardner Goldsmith. Thanks for being here on this beautiful day, wherever you might be. It's a lovely day in the neighborhood just to be alive and to keep fighting for freedom together. If you're watching us on Rumble, if you're watching us on Twitter, please join us in the Rockfin chat. I'll be checking out the questions in the Rockfin chat, and I do invite your questions and comments, particularly over the next half hour, as we enter into something I've been looking forward to with mixed feelings, because we're about to embark in a discussion of contemporary wrongdoing of a person who has been heretical against the state operandi, against the state attack on sovereignty of the individual and free will and freedom of association for peaceful people. We're about to speak with Ian Freeman of Free Talk Live. He's been my friend for a long time, and I'm really looking forward to talking to him. I'm not looking forward to talking to him about what he has been experiencing, but I think it's very important to get this information out on this, the anniversary of the battles of Lexington and Concord, and a couple other tragic anniversaries, of course, Waco and the Oklahoma City bombing. So today, in a couple seconds, we're going to be speaking with Ian of Free Talk Live. Let's check out what's going to be happening on that program tonight, Liberty Conspiracy Live, and we will also check out what's happening in the Rockfin chat. Right now, everybody, I want to let you know, later in the program, we'll do our news flash, and we'll go through a couple big stories. Of course, some people are very, very interested in RFK Jr. announcing for president, and there are a lot of other things that freedom fighters might want to hear. Maybe you've already heard about these. I want to get your opinions about some of the stories we'll be discussing. But right now, it's time for our Mind Meld to start everything off with radio host, liberty activist, as you see on your screen, entrepreneur Ian Freeman, my friend who awaits sentencing on federal crypto-related charges, whatever the heck that is supposed to mean. We'll find out more about this. This is a man who has, as I said, harmed no one. So it's time, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Let everybody gather at the Rockfin chat on Rumble, on Twitter. Thank you so much. We're starting quickly on the program tonight because I don't want to lose a second. Nice to have you here. I'm Gardner Goldsmith. You might know me from MRC TV. We'll talk about that stuff later. Let's get into the Mind Meld right now.
I must try to mind meld with it.
Murder! The thousands! Criminals! Eternity ends! Our minds are merging, Doctor. Our minds are one. I feel what you feel. I know what you know.
Yes, we're sucking up the mind along with my friend Ian Freeman of Free Talk Live. Hi, Ian. How you doing, man?
Hey, Guard. It's been way too long. Great to see you back in action. You're looking great.
Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And it's good to see you. You're looking good too, brother. And yeah, it has been too long. We've had a lot of stuff. Hold on a second here. We've had a lot of stuff going on. And I know that, yeah, it's just been a long time seeing you, dude. So listen, if people are unfamiliar with what you've been doing for years, you have been one of the co-creators and co-hosts of Free Talk Live on hundreds of radio stations, GCN, satellite, online, creator of Free Keen, one of the key people behind a worldwide trend that started the Robin Hooding in Keene, along with the other many other Free State Project folks who were helping out in paying for the parking meters of people. Always a great and noble host for me, welcoming me. So, Ian, I've got my screen over here. The camera's over here. So when I look at you, I'll be looking over here. but occasionally I'll be looking in here, and I'm putting all the other technology stuff aside. Um, yeah, it's. I haven't seen you in person for a while, man. And as you know, I haven't been feeling good, and I know you've been going through a lot of stuff. And so, um, I'm looking at you right now. It's good to see you. Your show starting up at 7 o'clock. Tell people a little bit about, if they're not familiar with your work, what you do and what you're facing right now coming up at the end of June.
Well, I mean, you summed up pretty good. I do a radio show. It's heard on over 170 radio stations across the week. Actually, tonight I've got a night off, so there will be some other hosts in the studio. But we're live 7 nights a week. We broadcast the ideas of liberty as far and as wide as we possibly can on broadcast radio, AM, FM radio across the country, live streaming, etc. I've been a lifetime liberty activist who migrated up here as part of the Free State Project, the Liberty migration here to New Hampshire. And the federal government has been investigating the Free State Project for a very long time. The FBI has been absolutely obsessed with the Free Staters, especially the ones out here in Keene. They were investigating us as far back that we know of, as far back as 2005. The very same agent who was sniffing around in 2005 has now made his way up through the ranks to some level of being in charge of other bureaucrats. And so he was behind the most recent attack, which was March 16th, I think, in 2021, when the studio that I'm in had its window smashed in and another window smashed on the other side. They threw a smoke grenade or a flashbang outside. They brought in a Bearcat with a battering ram on it and smashed in a window on the other side of the house. It's a duplex, so there's another side over there. And they raided both sides of the house with roughly, there's probably 50 men, not as many in the raiding squad, but there were ATF, IRS, Postal Service, plenty of FBI, and did lots of destruction, pulled out some critical wires from the broadcast equipment here in the studio, and of course searched the house and seized whatever it is that they wanted to seize in regards to their investigation surrounding the sale of Bitcoin without asking for government permission.
Amazing. Ian Freeman. Ian, of course, I know you're in that studio. You've welcomed me to that studio so many times. What time did they do that in March of 2021?
6 a.m. It was about 10 degrees outside.
And then they marched you outside. I don't think you had hardly anything on. They marched you outside, didn't they?
I did put a robe on prior to coming downstairs. And there was a bunch of broken glass inside the entryway, and then they made us put our shoes on, which had glass in them, so you had to dump as much of the broken glass out as possible. I picked up my dog. They gave me permission to pick up the dog. Thankfully, they didn't shoot him.
Oh, how magnanimous of them.
Yeah. And walked outside, where they then ordered me to put the dog down, and he just walked or ran off, and none of the FBI agents bothered to pick him up for 20 minutes as he was running around in the street. Thankfully, he didn't get hit by a car.
Yeah.
But it was it's a pretty shocking experience to go through something like that, especially when you're not like a terrorist or something.
Yeah.
And all the charges involved are completely victimless, so-called crimes, which they don't have actual charges for doing anything with Bitcoin. So what's been happening recently at the federal government gang is they've been targeting cryptocurrency, the industry in general. So you got the FBI coming after what they would call a peer-to-peer Bitcoin seller like me and my friends, because it wasn't just me that was arrested. It was 6 people in like a multi-pronged, multi-location raid, all basically at the same time.
Right.
But
they call them the Crypto 6.
Right. Yeah. The crypto6.com is a website. You can go learn more about it. You can watch the footage of the raid, actually, because we have security cameras up here. And luckily, we were able to get that footage back. So that's out there now. But the FBI has been targeting peer-to-peer sellers. We weren't the first. We're just somewhat high visibility compared to the typical sellers who've been targeted over the years. And then recently, the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, has been targeting cryptocurrency exchanges. They're trying now to go after decentralized autonomous organizations. The CFTC just filed a lawsuit against Binance, which is the world's largest Bitcoin exchange. And so you have a situation where multiple prongs of the federal gang have been attacking cryptocurrency in any way possible. And they have different viewpoints as to what cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is. So to the SEC, most cryptocurrency, except for Bitcoin, they say is a security. The CFTC says that the same things that the SEC is calling a security are actually commodities. The IRS says that they're a property, which is basically a commodity. The FBI says it's money or funds. So they just, whatever's convenient for the moment for the purpose of what they're trying to do, whether it be put people like me in prison, or whether it be bankrupting companies like Library for creating a YouTube competitor. They will just call crypto whatever's convenient because there's not actually anything in the law. The securities law is almost 100 years old. The money transmitter law is a few decades old.
Right.
So they're shoehorning this stuff in there. And of course, most people, when they're faced with, facing up to life in prison, they're going to take a plea deal. So most of the sellers took a plea, and like all the history of Bitcoin sellers being targeted by the FBI. I did not, because I don't think there's anything wrong with selling Bitcoin without asking for permission. Because in my opinion, it's not money. It's free speech. It is mathematics.
Right. And you always stand on principle, Ian. And it's some people, it's remarkable to see it. It's invigorating to see it. And it's infuriating to see what you've experienced. The things you described to me, I remember that morning when I saw a photograph and I heard about everything. I was just blown away. And then when I heard about what they had done, I heard more of the details about how they blew in the window, sent the drone thing in there, all those guys go flying in. I just couldn't believe it, destroying your property. And that's, in a way, as shocking as that is, that's the smallest of the injuries and insults that have been thrown your way in the past 2 years, Ian. I mean, it's like a parasite that has been around. That FBI guy, as you mentioned, has been around, sniffing around the Free State Project circles, especially in Keene, trying to nail people in various ways since 2005. We've all known about this. And it's like this parasite has grown and grown and grown large enough now where it can snap at you and hit you with its poison. Now you're dealing with the legal thing, which it's almost as if it's some sort of multiple personality disorder. The feds just don't know how they're going to attack you. I was curious to see, in this trial, a victimless trial, what did they say you had done to people? And however much you can discuss this, now that the trial is over, you're awaiting sentencing. Why don't we let people know what you could be facing at the end of June? I believe you said it's June 29th, right?
Correct. That's the current sentencing date. It's already been pushed back. It was supposed to be Friday this past week. So it's back a couple weeks or a couple months because they have to come up with what's called a pre-sentencing report. This is something that the probation department writes up. It's 30-something pages, and it goes over, any criminal history, which I don't have any violent criminal history. I've been arrested for civil disobedience, but that's it.
Right.
And so it goes into that. It goes into, the current charges and the current situation and there's all these like sentencing guidelines that take a lot of calculating to figure out, well, what is the range that the judge should consider sentencing. The judges have been freed up from that to some extent for some number of years. I don't remember when the change happened, but the judge can what they call depart from the sentencing guidelines, but they have to still be aware of what they are. So the pre-sentencing report explains that, and it looks like there's a lot of inaccuracies in the pre-sentencing report because they're saying that my sentencing range is 30 to 70 years in the pre-sentencing report. So we have to challenge that, and that's going to take another couple months before we got to put in whatever motions need to be put in to object to that report. So that's why there's a delay. But yeah, 70 years would essentially be a life sentence for me in this particular case with no victims.
So, and I wondered about this, Ian, because you had the opportunity and I had the opportunity to get crypto at about the same time. And I remember when I was in Nashua, it was one of the Free State Project's Liberty Forums. I was trying to get from one end of the hotel to the other end of the hotel where they had a crypto kiosk. It was one of the early kiosks. Yeah. And I ended up chatting with people in the hallway so long that I didn't make it over, and it was on a Sunday, and they were shutting things down. I didn't get any, and I think you got some that day, and other people got some that day too. And you were just starting off. You got it at a very, very low price. You knew, how it would be a great hedge against inflation, and for quite a while probably it would attract investors for that purpose and for trading as well. And you knew a lot of the advantages of it. And I was wondering, when they went after you like that, and again, circumspection is key, obviously, but you have such monumental legal bills now. Did they seize? They must have seized a lot of your property here, and you will not get that back, right?
They seized over 100 bitcoins in the form of a physical bitcoin, which is like a kind of a gimmick that came out a decade ago. There's no such thing as a physical bitcoin, but there's these little tokens that somebody made up that have a code inside them, and that gives you access to the online coins. Anyway, these are collector's items. They took 100, and then they took a single that were in a safe here, the Shire Free Church. And those are the church's bitcoins. They don't belong to me. They were donated to us many years ago, prior to the whole cryptocurrency vending machine, online Bitcoin sales thing. So there's a separate court case that the Shire Free Church is involved in, with a different minister in the church who's saying, "Whoa, you can't take that. That's not Ian's. It didn't have anything to do with the selling of Bitcoin." So we'll see, what happens to that. Obviously, as you know, once the federal government gets their hands on something, you have to spend even more money to try to, hire lawyers to get it back. So I think there's a strong argument there that they shouldn't be able to seize it. They can only seize something if it is the proceeds of the alleged crime.
Right.
And the crimes in this case, there were 26, I think, that I was facing initially, or 20 something. And they dropped 17 charges right before trial, thankfully dropping the one charge that had a minimum 10-year sentence on it right before trial. But then they hit me with 8 charges at trial. Let's see, operating an unlicensed money transmitter, conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money transmitter, money laundering in regards to selling Bitcoin allegedly to someone claiming to be a drug dealer, was an undercover IRS agent. I didn't sell them. Sell this person Bitcoins, but they still charged me with it anyway. And then the other money laundering charge in regards to allegedly assisting online scammers laundering their funds, which the state never presented any evidence of whatsoever, but they simply said, well, Freeman respects people's privacy, and he advocated for privacy. He and his advertisement said that he respects privacy. So therefore, that means he was basically attracting criminals. And the whole idea is that privacy is crime, that only criminals would support privacy, or only criminals would want privacy. So they essentially accused me of willful ignorance, and that I should have known better, even though I had a bunch of questions that I had developed over time. This what you would call a know your customer procedure that I would put the crypto buyers through, the Bitcoin buyers through, and they would pass it. And if they didn't pass it, I would not sell the Bitcoin to them. But it turns out that a lot of these people that are getting scammed online will lie to you. I had no idea that these people were being scammed, but that's what they ended up doing. They brought some elderly online scam victims into the court. They had them tell their story, which are very sad stories, and various different types of scams, everything from a romance scam to one guy lost his life savings because somebody called him up and claimed to be from the federal government and told him to empty his bank accounts and buy a bunch of Bitcoin with it. And this guy did everything he was told to do. The other 4 charges, all of them felonies, of course. The other 4 charges were so-called tax evasion. And the jury, despite the slimy federal goons that they called up, who were obviously dishonest, and the fact that I had nothing to do with any sort of knowledge of dealing with any scammers or anything like that, they found me guilty. They totally believed what the federal government said. So it's a real tragic situation.
In a way, Ian, I'm particularly appreciative of you mentioning those specific stories that came through these secondary operators, because that has been the focus of a lot of the pop media here, whether somebody is reading something which is, incredibly sketchy and full of erroneous information from WMUR TV, Channel 9 Manchester, or it's something from the Union Leader or something else, even on a national level. They'll focus on these things the same way that, say, Ross Ulbricht, they would focus on side things that had nothing to do with Ross and the Silk Road. And your interest in dealing with people privately, and the fact that you even developed a series of questions, those should be the only things that are pertinent to anybody. It would be like someone saying, "Hey, you operated a hardware store and you sold charcoal briquettes to somebody, and you didn't ask whether or not that person was going to put the charcoal briquettes into somebody's bedroom, light them on fire, and do something to cause smoke inhalation." Like, how far do you have to go to handmaiden every one of these people and say, I'm going to be monitoring you? That's not part of the deal. And if it were part of the deal, that runs against the entire concept of crypto in the first place, which is why they want to go after it.
Well, and the irony, a lot of it, some of the irony of this is that every single one of these poor old folks who got taken advantage of by an online scammer, every one of them went to a bank first, to a registered financial institution that follows all the rules and files all the forms and all that stuff. And every single one of them convinced those tellers to literally send their life savings away. Usually not all at once, but once one day and then another day, and before you know it, it's one guy sent over $1 million away. Not to me, by the way. Only he sent 1.2-ish million dollars of his life savings away. About 280,000 went into the Shire Free Church, which is my church's accounts.
Yeah.
And then the other $900,000. You know what? The federal government, the guy admitted on the stand under cross-examination, the federal FBI never asked him a single question about the other $900,000 that he lost.
Unbelievable. It reminds me, Ian, of a few weeks ago with SVB, and how the FDIC somehow made certain people aware that the SEC and the FDIC were going to get rid of, or SVB was going to fall. And most of the depositors weren't made aware of it, but somehow special people were made aware of it. So it all depends on whether they like your agenda and whether you're part of the club, as George Carlin might say. And I'm glad you brought up the church, because I wanted to make sure that people understood what you had worked on for quite a while to make sure that you did it right, to help start up the Shire Free Church in Keene, New Hampshire, and how that was clearly not liked by the people in Keene, New Hampshire, who want to get their hands on everybody's property through property taxes. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And if I'm off base, Ian, please let me know if I'm not seeing the Shire Free Church's progression properly. But I believe it was sort of your idea, right?
I was one of the co-founders of the Shire Free Church, which we founded back in 2012, 2013. Then eventually we ended up, I sort of had this vision for selling Bitcoin. And the idea there was that by spreading cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, that would help foster peace. The mission of the Shire Free Church, which is an interfaith church, is to foster peace. And so the way I see it is that the government money system, whether we're talking about the dollar or the euro or whatever central bank currencies, is a way to promote war, because we know that once the gold backing went away from the dollar, they could just print as much out as they wanted to, and of course fund any amount of warmongering all around the world, endlessly buying bombs and dropping them on Middle Easterners or whatever. And so my thought was, well, if we can get people out of the dollar and into alternatives like cryptocurrency, then every dollar that leaves the old system, the government money system, is a dollar they can't touch. It's a dollar they can't tax. They can't extract the wealth from through the power of the printing press. So to me, it was a mission of peace. The way the the federal government wanted to portray it was that the Shire Free Church, they kept using the term purported church, as though they get to decide what is and what is not a church. And that's just a load of nonsense. That was certainly one of the most hurtful parts about the trial, beyond the claim that I would somehow work with a scammer or whatever, which I would never do. As a libertarian, we're firmly against fraud. And so that whole idea was pretty insulting as well. But the sad part is, the jury seemed to buy it, which was really shocking. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you have. And in fact, it's interesting because one of the really, really satisfying conversations I had with you over in the studios there one night, you and I started talking about spirituality and the devil. And I said, if there is real evil, what would and this is before I started to really look into how there had to be a source for the world. You don't get physics from physics. There has to be something metaphysical for physics to exist, for it to have come about. But you and I had a great conversation. If there is true evil, metaphysical evil, what would that evil want? It would want for us, the creations, to not achieve their best, for life to not achieve what it was designed to achieve by the Almighty. And I'll never forget that conversation. It was a terrific conversation. And I always knew your sincerity about philosophy and about belief and the spirit. And they're attacking so many things. A friend, a good guy, and as I mentioned in my message to you, I just really appreciated you coming to my mom's memorial the way you did.
Of course. Love you, Guard. You're awesome.
You too, man.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we'll just have to pray that the judge here, and we don't have to necessarily mention the judge's name, but the judge's position here is that the judge has some discretion, it seems, to be able to listen to people. There was a time limit there, April 15th, was that, or April 14th, to get all the letters into the judge and things like that, Ian,
that's been extended now since the delay. There's a 2-month delay on the hearing, so letters can continue to come in if anybody wants to. If you're familiar with me and if I've helped you, or how I've helped or benefited the community, then you would qualify to write a letter to the judge you can go to letters.freetalklive.com, and there's some brief instructions there. I'm not going to hold your hand through it, but just to basically give you an idea of how most people are kind of structuring things.
That's letters.freetalklive.com.
Yep. That's got all the details, address to which you can send it. If you want to send me a draft so I can review it. A lot of times I don't want to tell somebody what to write, but I'll usually catch oh, hey, you forgot to put your contact information in. Just kind of remind somebody, add your contact info, and then send it to me, and we'll get it in front of the judge, and hopefully that'll have some kind of effect. And of course, the federal government's prosecutors are going to try to paint me to be some sort of dastardly criminal, and I've already seen that they haven't been released publicly yet, but I've already seen what they call the victim statements, which of course there's no victims in this trial.
Exactly.
But yet they had these poor elderly folks write letters where some of them, not all, but some of them blamed me. They said that they think I was the one behind the scams, behind the scam artists, which of course makes absolutely no sense.
It's just factually wrong. They don't have any
factually wrong, but there's not only is there no evidence for that, but further, why would someone of even remote intelligence, and these scammers are very, very, very intelligent. They want to stay anonymous, right? They don't want to know. They don't want you to know who they are.
Right.
They don't want. They're not going to put their name out on Front Street for the most part. They're not going to advertise their bank accounts and put everything out there for people to easily find them. So the idea that I would somehow be behind this is absolutely absurd. But essentially, I think what's happened here is the prosecutors have come to these the victims of the scammers and said, "See, the jury found Mr. Freeman guilty of money laundering. That means the jury said he was working with these scam artists, and so they just believe whatever they're being told by the police in this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's a strange narrative. I talked about it on the flip side one time, Ian. When you look at Bill Clinton with the whole lying under oath thing with Linda Tripp and the Monica Lewinsky thing. And reporters, more on the conservative side, would try to do a gotcha and say, don't you think you should apologize to the American people for lying under oath? And he's like, I've already apologized for my relationship with the. So it's a deflection, and on this side, they're essentially doing the same thing, but to you, and you're on the other side of it. You actually haven't done anything, but they're building a narrative based on falsehoods, and then they're injecting your image in a sort of a rear screen projection thing. There's actually nothing there. They're just projecting it behind there, so it looks like you're on the moon, in an Arthur C. Clarke production or something like that.
Yeah, the reality of it is, I was a top-level seller on a website called localbitcoins.com, which has subsequently been closed, or is closing, the process of closing down.
Yeah.
But was a very, very, highly rated seller, 100% positive feedback. Over, I think, close to 2,000 individuals had purchased from me, and the federal government managed to find a few dozen at most people who'd been taken advantage of by some online scammers, and the online scammers sent these people to purchase Bitcoin, and I had a great rating, so I was just the guy from whom Bitcoin was purchased by these online scammers. They could have picked any number of the people on that particular website, and I'm sure other people on that website have dealt with these things before. And if these people are willing to lie, and they are, because they just fall under the spell of these people. It's really sad.
Right.
They believe they've got some sort of lover overseas, and they will do, love is very, very powerful emotion. They'll do anything, including tell me or any other seller lies. So if it wasn't me, it would have been somebody else who sold it to them. Like I said, there was the one guy who sent over $900,000 somewhere else. He didn't send it to me. So, and he lied every single question I had. I asked him, I said, because by the time he was dealing with me, I'd seen enough, right? Like I'd seen some scams already, and I knew what to look for. And I said, are you being coerced? He said, no. I said, are you involved with a third party? He said, no. He insisted. I brought up romance scams. He said he wasn't, being scammed. And I, so brought up all these questions and asked him about the wallet that he was depositing into. He'd already had some reputation on the website. So I presume that was from the other 900,000 that he sent away. He bought Bitcoin somewhere else.
Right.
I think he had like a dozen or 20 sales under his belt at that point. So I'm like, this guy looks completely legit. He sounded completely legit. He told me that he was going to be purchasing the Bitcoin for his own personal investments. I mean, it's not hard to believe that someone up in their years who has money to invest would be interested in doing that. So I sold him the Bitcoin. He came back later and bought more, and then subsequently bought more. And the only reason I found out something was wrong with him was at some point his bank came in and tried to pull back one of the wire transfers. And I contacted him. I said, hey, what's going on here? And then I got a phone call he didn't answer. And I got a phone call from a detective in Travis County, Texas. Spent a half hour on the phone with the detective who, I did everything I could. I sent him all the information I had and all the photographs that I had, because I had this, this whole process that buyers had to go through. And the Texas guy, the cop, explained to me what was going on. And this guy was taken for a ride by someone claiming to be from the federal government on the phone with him and emptied his bank account. And the weird thing was, when this guy took the stand in my case and he was asked by my attorney if we had a conversation, he said, I spoke with him, but I only asked one question. And that is not true. That is not what happened at all. That's what every one of the prosecution's so-called victim witnesses, again, they weren't my victims, but they were victims of online scammers. Every one of them claimed that I only ever asked one question. And I know with that guy, there was a series of them. So I don't think he was lying. Maybe he just forgot. I don't know. But again, that's you going over and above what would be necessary. They didn't do that at his bank.
Exactly. your interactions with these people are no different than the interactions of the bank, and you did more than what the bank did, and yet you're the one who's being prosecuted. You're not getting FDIC insurance. You're not, you're not a pal of Liz Warren. She clearly does not like you,
Right.
and she wants central bank digital currency, and they are. This is a systematic effort, and you were one of the first people they went after, and
Not
that
really.
sort of makes it faceless.
They've been going after a lot of Bitcoin sellers. I'd seen.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, over the years, I'd seen it happen. I mean, I knew. In fact, I even knew they were investigating me for years. It was
Wow.
2018 was when they went to my ex-girlfriend Renee's house with her then fiance,
Mhm.
and they sent the FBI agent that was investigating this case went there and tried to intimidate them into talking. Said something about oh, I'm a money launderer and this and that, and Renee called me immediately afterwards and let me know what was going on. So I knew they were investigating me, and then a year later, I got caught wind of it again because somebody who bought from me on local Bitcoins sent me a message several months later and said 2 FBI agents just showed up at my house. And then another year later in 2020, I got a more of a heads up because that was when they sent the undercover IRS agent into our crypto and meetups here in Keene.
Yeah.
And that's when he mentioned that he was a heroin dealer.
Oh.
I'm like, whoa, red alert. Okay, we've either got either got an undercover cop here or a total moron. And
Yeah.
my thought was more likely to be an undercover cop, because if you were to go and look at every other case of when
Right.
they were investigating a local Bitcoin seller, an online Bitcoin seller, every time they send in an undercover cop, and the undercover cop makes a couple of buys, everything's normal. And then he drops out there that he's a heroin dealer every time.
It's always going to be the drugs. Yeah.
I knew what they hit, and it has to be the worst drug, right?
Yeah,
I'm not gonna
absolutely.
say they're a marijuana
Absolutely.
dealer, but that's how they do it, and I knew how they did it. So
Right.
I didn't believe this guy was a drug dealer. But even so, I know what the rules are about money laundering. And when he came back to me and said, he came back later on via text or a Telegram message, and he said, "Hey, can I come to town and buy some more Bitcoin from you?" And I said, "Nope, sorry. I can't knowingly sell Bitcoin to you." I actually cited the wording of the law itself, of the money laundering law. And the federal government said that because I said knowingly that, oh, that was a wink and a nod, that, I still wanted to sell him Bitcoin, but I couldn't knowingly. There was this whole theory that they had that, like, even though I said no, that I still wanted to sell in Bitcoin or something. And so then he comes back a month later, comes to one of our Bitcoin meetups. And at the very end of this meetup, he says to me, "Hey, is you still have the Bitcoin machine in Keene?" Because the Shire Free Church had 4 Bitcoin vending machines across New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, it's still in Keene." He said, "Can I use it?" And I said, "I can't tell you can use that, okay?" He says, "Okay, all right." And then I figured that was the end of that.
Right.
Was that me saying, yes, go ahead, use the machine?
No.
No,
Exactly.
he's saying, I can't tell you that you can use that.
Right.
So he says, "Oh," I said, "Okay." He says, "Okay, all right." That was the end of that. And then later on, he goes to the machine, pumps $20,000 in, and they said that was money laundering.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Jerry bought it.
Unbelievable.
And the money laundering charge requires you to conduct a transaction. It's the number one element of a money laundering charge, is you have to conduct or even attempt to conduct a transaction, which I never did. So I think what happened here is, and we don't know what the jury was thinking, but I think what happened was they didn't believe my story, and they essentially did the reverse of jury nullification. Even without the federal government meeting its requirements of the elements of these charges, because they didn't, and that's why we're going to appeal all of the 8 counts, because they didn't.
That's where I wanted to go. Exactly. Yeah.
They didn't meet their requirements. Not a single one of those charges, but that doesn't matter, because the jury, in the same way that a jury can nullify a charge, because remember, we've talked over the years about jury nullification. I'm
Absolutely.
sure a lot of your audience is familiar. The traditional idea behind jury nullification is that even if the feds or the state government or whoever has proven their case, even if they catch a marijuana dealer in the midst of selling the marijuana, that's like, it's on video, it's case closed, the jury can still say not guilty because they think the law is bad.
Exactly.
or they would just
Exactly.
want to set this guy free. Well, the opposite is true. If the state hasn't actually proven the case, but the jury's just like, screw this guy,
Yeah.
guilty, you're guilty.
And that's where a judge should be very strict with the jury instructions, with the types of prosecution claims that they can make if they don't back them up, and very clearly, any judge looking at the U.S. Constitution, looking at the state constitution, these are federal charges, but looking at the U.S. Constitution in particular, would recognize that the giant strata, the cake of charges that have been leveled against you are based on statutes that, as people who swear their oaths to the U.S. Constitution, they would have to recognize as being unconstitutional. And then all of the other stuff falls apart as far as evidentiary standards go regarding whether or not you participated in defrauding people. Those are very, very clear. Those two strata are very clear. And I'm very interested to see, when you appeal this, where will it go upon appeal, Ian?
The First Circuit in Boston, Court of Appeals.
Okay. And that is, I'm not familiar with whether or not the makeup of the First Circuit is particularly, some are a little bit less collectivist and more constitutionalist, like the Second Circuit. So First Circuit, I don't know. And, I won't speculate about it. Yeah.
And there aren't many cases like this because most people take a plea deal.
Yeah.
The other people in my case took a plea, and I don't blame them for it. I mean, it's scary when you're up against a ton of stacked charges. That's what they do. They stack as many charges on you as they can to try to scare you.
Yeah.
And it is scary.
Yeah.
No one wants to go to prison for the rest of their lives who hasn't harmed anybody else. So they tap out and they take a plea, and I don't blame them for it at all. But that, as a result, means we haven't seen a lot of people go to trial in these sorts of cases, and we certainly haven't seen many appeals. So I suspect the First Circuit Court of Appeals has never heard a case like this.
Yeah, right. This is terra incognita. This is big. This is tragically, horrifically big, and it really bothers me. Ian, do you mind if I go to the Rockfin chat? I want to ask the folks in Rockfin chat. Yeah, thank you so much, Ian. And if we had the opportunity to take callers, I would do the same. I want to check out some of the quotes here. Jason Barker, one of the good guys. And Ian, if you haven't heard of what Jason does, he and Angry Tiger, Franco Mattei, have formed a program. They were watching David Knight's show as I was on Rockfin, and we would gather, especially those guys would gather afterwards in the Rockfin chat. They formed their own show. It's on Saturday mornings, 10 o'clock. They stream it live. So let's go with questions or comments, everybody, real quick. Let's see, Jason. Let's see if I read these right, Jason, and let me know if I'm messing anything up, or if I shouldn't be reading something. Just going to check this over here. Yeah, Jason says, I've been talking for quite a while on the paper to physical ration on gold and silver. The price is down because of the fiat paper. Yeah, so he's talking right now of people who are trying to escape from, of course, the fiat currency system. If they're not going into crypto, we're talking about gold and silver. And of course, we know that the dollar is starting to show just how threadbare it is, Ian. And you and I have known this. Yeah.
I mean, look at the grocery store prices. I mean, it's hitting people pretty hard. Rent's up like 30 or 40% for a lot of people. So I mean, this is a real problem. And I'm glad you mentioned gold as well.
Yeah.
I'm also a big fan of precious metals. I mean, crypto took a lot of the libertarian community's attention for a while, but in the meantime, gold and silver is still cranking away. And there's a really cool product that I found at Freedom Fest in 2019 called the Goldback.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. And as you know, I haven't been able to go to Freedom Fest or Pork Fest or anything. I've been so sick, and I keep wanting to be there amongst you. And I've heard about it, and everybody tells me, "Oh, I got some of that when I was there." It's really cool. It's got a little built in, right?
It's actual real gold, and the process is like, I think it's called vacuum depositing. It's essentially layering like an atomically thin kind of layer of gold. You take 1/1000th of an ounce of gold, and you end up with something that's just a little bit smaller than a dollar bill. So it's just an amazing technology that actually makes fractional gold possible to where you can actually spend it. There's a few businesses here in Keene. There's actually, I think, dozens of them across New Hampshire that actually accept the gold back at point of sale. So it's actually making gold useful for the first time in generations and generations. So if your viewers haven't checked it out yet, go to goldback.com and see what they got going on. There's several states.
This is great. In fact, yesterday, Ian, on the show, I was talking about how Arkansas, not to praise Sarah Huckabee Sanders or any other politician who's taken an office of the parasitic state, but they did pass one bill that she assigned into statutory enforcement, a legal tender bill that will allow for gold and silver coin to be used as legal tender. But there are these problems with it because, of course, the state has to approve what the legal tender coins can be. And of course, those could be bimetallic, they could be alloyed, and they're never willing to just freely take their hands off the controlling system and allow people to be free to decide on the values that they feel are important for their currency. Sure. And it's amazing to me. And, people are saying, well, that's a good idea. It's like, well, okay, it's a good concept, but it still retains within it the poison of legal tender laws. And sure. This is a very key time to be learning from people. And, it is an amazing thing to see, Ian, how you hold yourself together so well. And when you are on the air, you still offer people opportunities to learn about stuff like this. Here we are in a conversation like this, and you're giving people positive info. I mean, I suppose, your days are filled with a lot of different things, and you're going to be doing good things even as you fight this fight. Let me just mention, Rhonda in the chat mentions prayers for this guy. And Rhonda, absolutely. Jason Marcus says, oh, well, that's good to hear about the goldbacks. I've been hearing about it, but didn't know how much it has taken off. And Anarchy Andrew, Andrew, he lives just a few minutes away from me. Mm-hmm. He says, New Hampshire has their own goldback. It's beautiful. Sure. Yep. And so there's a lot of comments here from folks on Rockfin. Ian, I'll get ready to wrap things up, but I'd love to bring you back on, sure, next few weeks or whatever. It would be great. I really would appreciate it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. That would be fantastic. One other thing that I think that needs to get focused on these days is independence. As you can see, I have the It's Not You, It's Me shirt on here with nhexit.us on the back. There's been a real launch of the ideas of independence again here in New Hampshire over the last year. There was the CACR 32 bill that came up last year that would have allowed the people of New Hampshire to vote on independence. Unfortunately, the state rep decided that the people shouldn't be able to make that decision, and they voted it down. But it's just the beginning. It's just the first trial run on that, and I think it's likely to come back around. So there's no better time than now to start talking with friends and neighbors about independence again. It's an idea that's time has come again. New Hampshire did it once upon a time with the king, and we can do it again with the new king in Washington, D.C. And it doesn't matter if it's Trump. It doesn't matter if it's Biden. The government's going to get bigger. It's going to get worse. They're going to build on the tyranny that they already have. The money's going to continue to inflate. They're going to continue to impoverish you. So we either wait around until the federal government comes crumbling down, or we get out from underneath it and say goodbye peacefully this time. And absolutely. I think that a lot of people need to start thinking about that.
So true. And Ian, I know as in any conversation, as you wrap things up or whatever, you give the personal accolades and things like that. But I do want to mention, very important, for people who are watching live now or after the fact, if they can themselves go to Free Talk Live, if they can connect with you guys, if they can spread the word about your show and about what you personally are going through, they themselves can do it. And if they can get 2 other people to do it, just ask a couple of friends or family members, here, take a look at this, find out what's going on. We know there's a lot of stuff buzzing in the world, but we got a real guy here, a real guy, and he's fighting a good fight. So if you can keep it in mind, please do. Sorry, I'm getting emotional again, man.
Okay, but, man. It's a pretty emotional circumstance, and it's a lot to deal with, and I appreciate your kind words. I appreciate you having me on here. It's like I said, it's been too long. It's great to be back on the air with you, Gard, and I hope I get to see you in person. yourself out of the house hopefully soon. And
yeah, absolutely, man.
I
What
don't
I'll
know
do
if
is
I can go to Pork Fest, but if you're there, I hope I'll be able to get up for a day at
we'll
least.
bring Pork Fest to you or something like that.
They
We'll
actually
see
did
what we
that.
can do.
They did that
Oh.
the first year when I got out of jail, because they put me in jail for 69 days wrongfully on these charges before I finally was granted bail. They
Yeah.
denied my bail, saying that I was like a danger to the community or whatever, which obviously I'm not. And then so I finally got out, and then that summer after the Porcupine Freedom Festival, they without telling me, I had no idea. Just I started seeing people walk into my side yard because I was on home confinement at the time, and they threw a big party in the side yard, which was very, very nice.
Oh man, I love it. Well, let's have some people, if we can, convince the people in Rockfin or on Twitter or on Rumble, help the party for Ian. Send a letter to the judge. Listen to Free Talk Live. Find out what you know about Ian's plight and what he's gone through, and especially the principle of voluntary interaction. And that is exactly what Ian has stood for all the time I've met him, consistently, and he's not going down. He's still standing for it. This I don't even want to bring up history. It's just a personal thing to know this is one of those guys right here. So, Ian, with that, I will say thank you again. And I can't wait to get out of the house and see you, brother. It'll be really, really good stuff. I'll drive over the mountain and through the woods over to Keene, and I'll see you. And I'll be listening to Free Talk Live. Again, mention the website for everybody if they want to write a letter, or just check out Free Talk Live.
Letters.freetalklive.com will take you right to a blog post with all the details on how to write a letter, and then you can listen to the show, watch it live, listen to the podcast, etc. Like I said, it's 7 days a week, so it's a lot, but there's plenty of content there. So hopefully you'll find something you like.
Absolutely, and there's always great learning opportunities every night. People can learn stuff from you because you take the philosophy of freedom and you apply it consistently every time. It's awesome.
Yeah,
so,
and it's
Ian,
open phones too, so you can call in and share whatever's going on with you and the issues that you think are important that you want a national radio audience to hear about, which we would love to hear from some new voices. Great.
Yeah, absolutely. So right. All right, so we'll wrap that up. And Ian, what I'll do is I'll text you after the show, and I'll call you tomorrow. And I'll do the rest of the show here tonight. I'll just text you before I grab some dinner and stuff. And thank you again, man.
Great, my pleasure.
Yeah, greatly appreciated. And man, I love that shirt.
NHexit.us. They actually don't sell the shirts there. You can buy these shirts at thinkpenguin.com, which is a friend of mine, Chris from Think Penguin, which sells like Linux laptops and stuff, but he's also a big independent supporter.
Yeah, I love it, man. All right, Ian, Free Talk Live, a free man. You're always Ian Freeman, and I'll text you tonight, and I'll give you a call tomorrow. Ian, rock on. People can listen to the show tonight, starting at 7:00. Free Talk Live. Go to the website. Ian won't be on tonight, but the co-hosts will be on tonight, and I'm telling you, it's a great show. Because hey, I know from whence I have appeared. So what can you do? Indeed. Thanks, man. We'll talk to you soon, Ian. Take care.
Enjoy your show.
You got it, man. Thank you. Ian Freeman, everybody. Ian Freeman of Free Talk Live. He is a good man. Remember.